All right, welcome everybody to the community lunch hour today, where we'll be talking about organizational endowments. We really appreciate you joining us for this opportunity to learn more about key issues in our community. And I would like to go ahead and thank our sponsors, Sentry and Delta Dental, for the work that they do in helping support our community lunch hours. I'll go ahead and hand it off to Marlee Samuels to talk more about the session today.
Awesome. Thanks, Kaying. And welcome, everyone. We're really excited that you're joining us today. We are going to be talking about organizational endowment funds and the benefits that they have to our community, to organizations, and also to the donors that work with your nonprofit. So I'm going to share my screen now to give you a little bit of background information. Can everyone see it? Just a thumbs up when it's up. Yeah. Okay, awesome. So what is an organizational endowment fund? What are we talking about today? So an organizational endowment fund is a tool at the community foundation that organizations can use to strengthen the long-term support of their organization, to be able to invest and really think towards the long-term future of what impact they can make. So an organizational endowment fund provides annual support to an organization to accomplish their mission well into the future. This is a specific strategic tool that our community has the opportunity to be a part of for donors to put money into an endowment fund, and then the organization begins to see that annual grant every year. So the foundation, on behalf of the nonprofit organization, the Community Foundation manages investments, acknowledge all gifts, works with donors, facilitating gifts, individuals, working with people who are wanting to leave part of their estate or their legacy into this endowment fund, and help to promote the fund and the nonprofits in our community who are looking towards that long-term strategic vision for their impact. Currently, the Community Foundation manages over 35 of these organizational endowment funds, which means there's 35 different nonprofits already in tune and working with this fund type. And thankfully, we have John Harry, Tasha Beestman, and Danielle Belsky here, each on behalf of their nonprofit organization to talk about their endowment fund, why they have it, a little bit about their donors, etc. So that's a little bit of background, and we're going to start with Tasha. If you want to do a little bit of introduction and tell everyone about your endowment fund.
Sure. I'm Tasha Beestman. I'm the executive director at Meals on Wheels here in Stevens Point. I've been with the organization for 7 years now, and we deliver meals during the noon hour to homebound individuals in the Stevens Point community through the help of volunteers, and these are all provided on a contribution basis. So our endowment was started in September of 2011. So it was before I started here. Our endowment came about because of a gift from an individual as part of their estate. It started with that single gift, and since then, in the last 13 years, it's more than doubled. It's almost tripled in value, actually. And that's been a very big support for us and a help for us. It's nice that every year we can budget on a certain amount that we're going to get from it every year, and we can count on that. And because of the investments, it continues to grow over time. So even without additional donations, but we have received additional estate donations through them, or to our endowment, it continues to grow. Even with the recession, we lost, but we didn't lose as bad as it could have been. So that funds, it's really adds a security and a buffer for us, for our organization, to be able to continue to do what we do.
Awesome. Thanks, Tasha. John, do you want to introduce yourself and go next?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on this conversation today. I think I think endowments are so, it's one of those words that we know really well in the industry, and it's great to be able to educate people on how important these things are to organizations. So My name is John Harry. I'm the executive director of the Portage County Historical Society. I've been in this role almost 3 years. The organization, as our name suggests, we are the Historical Society, so we deal with history. Our mission is to share the stories of Portage County through education and preservation. And we do that through different educational programming in schools and the general public, different tours, different special events, spread out mostly across our 4 different historic sites. So we have a synagogue and a firehouse in Stevens Point. The Rising Star Mill in Nelsonville is one of our sites. And then we have Heritage Park in Plover is 11 different historical buildings. So that alone is a reason to have an endowment. So each of those sites actually has its own separate fund with the community foundation, as well as we have our main Portage County Historical Society, like general fund that, kind of goes to wherever we need it. And so it's been fun to look at the history of when all this started and not be able to find all the concrete answers that I wanted to. But our endowment started in the 1980s. Ramon Stade, who was an administrator or principal at SPASH, had approached the leadership of the organization at that time to set up an endowment. And they actually set it up through a private company that is based out of Arizona that I had never heard of before. And so that's how it was born. And then the executive director of the Community Foundation approached the Historical Society. His name is Scott Schultz. And he said, why not keep your money locally and have great people to talk to? So that's when we moved it to the Community Foundation of Central Wisconsin. So like the endowment, to kind of go off of what Tasha was saying, it's one of those things that I look forward to every year to getting our disbursement, which is coming up in October. But being an executive director, I'm constantly looking at different financial reports and going, oh, this is going to be great because we'll get X amount of dollars that's going to add to our bottom line to make what we do possible. So the hope is we can keep growing the endowment and to keep those possibilities within our organization for growth happening. I'm the first ever paid staff member. So December of 2021 is when I started. And so since then, we now are me plus another full-time staff member and a part-time staff member. So we're 2.5 about. And that growth wouldn't be possible without knowing that we have this really steady revenue stream every year and have basically a partner in our finances with the Community Foundation.
Awesome. Thanks, John, for sharing. Danielle, will you introduce yourself?
Yeah. Good afternoon. I had to check myself if it was morning or afternoon, but good afternoon, everyone. I'm Danielle Belsky with the Boys and Girls Club Portage County. Stepped into the CEO role just a couple months ago, but I have been with the club for over 15 years. So started in 2009. And when this organization first started, as Kevin Quavillion was our founding executive director with our board, it started in 2002, and from where our organization has come from 2002 to today has grown tremendously through the years. We operate with 10 club sites around Portage County, that out of school time programming, a safe place for kids to go after school each day. And in the summertime, we just got done with our busiest season yet. So excited to kind of get the kids back in school, get things going. But really why I'm here today is to talk more about our endowment, obviously. Our endowment was started in 2012 when our board of directors saw an opportunity for those dollars to be invested and for us to strategically grow with where our organization was. As I mentioned, in 2002 to where we are today, right in that time was when we were really starting thinking of what is the direction our organization wants to go in the time coming. And this was an opportunity for us to work locally with our community foundation to better invest those dollars and for our donors to really invest in their legacy, to see what they're wanting to do. I think it's important for organizations to have an endowment because it shows how strong your organization is and how much your community really supports your organization for the long-term growth for that. It also shows, being a youth serving organization, that the kids are our future, right? That's what we hear. And we want our future generations to keep coming and keep prospering with us. So that is something today, is we have 2 endowment funds. One is our agency endowment where we're putting those funds right into it. And then others is more board designated where they have the opportunity to put in there annually. So I'm sure we'll get into a little bit more detail on each of those, but just a little bit of taste of kind of where our organization's coming from.
Awesome. Thanks, Danielle. And you touched on my next question. So why should an organization have an endowment fund? You know, the Boys and Girls Club making sense, that long-term future of the children and supporting kids. But I don't know if you had anything more, or Tasha or John, you want to.
I can just highlight a little bit more. But as I said, is in 2012, that's when our organization was really strategically thinking as we built our Burrard Center in 2015, so we could see that our ground, that was our first standalone building. And so by that time, we knew that there was a long-term future, obviously, with our organization. So that was something that was started. I'm trying to look at some of my notes here, but I think it was one of those things that we also had an opportunity that came about in 2022 with a donor that was really looking to invest and leave a long-lasting legacy with our organization. So that's where we started another endowment at that time. I don't know if Tasha or John want to go.
So one of the things that our organization relies very heavily upon volunteers. We wouldn't be able to do what we do without their help. We are very small too. We only have a total of 2 FTEs, myself and then 3 part-time. And I can't deliver our 40,000 meals by myself. So we have used our endowment. It's our guarantee that we can do a volunteer recognition. That is what we have always kind of earmarked, so that even with budget constraints or it secures that, and it allows us to continue knowing that we can recognize our volunteers. Again, that counting on for the growth. Like John had said, it's always fun this time of year. Our disbursement comes in October as well. So it's like, oh, good. We can do some of those last minute things this year because the funds are going to be there. And having that security is good, as well as talking to donors, you know, having their gift be a lasting impact is really a nice thing, you know. Of course, we all need funds now in the current year as well, but when you can turn a donation into money for the life of the program, I think that means a lot to donors.
I think it gives donors a great opportunity as both Danielle and Tasha have talked about, can leave a legacy. We're the historical society, so legacy is like the business we're in, right? And so we want to make sure that the people who come before us are being honored in a way that is what they want. And so this is an opportunity for donors to get involved in the organization beyond them being alive. So I think that's a really powerful thing to be able to offer to people, to say you're going to be part of this for a long time. For the organization, it helps us fund the things that are harder to fund but super important, like operational expenses. Right? Like everybody wants, like, here's this big, cool project that you're working on. We got a bunch of those too, but none of that happens unless we have paid staff or insurance or, like the utility bills paid, the things that it's like, it's hard to go to a single major gift donor and be like, will you just pay our insurance bill this year? That would be great. Right. So this is a way for us to cover those costs so we can focus our like day-to-day, year-to-year fundraising on the things that really engage people and not have to ask for insurance money. Though that is, if anybody's watching and they were like, I love insurance, we should talk. But yeah, it's great for operational expenses.
Awesome. Thanks everyone for sharing. When you think about your strategy, what you're leading alongside your board for your organization, but you have an endowment fund, you're also always looking for operational funds. How do you and your board determine what a strategy would be? And if you're comfortable sharing what your strategy is for your endowment fund?
I can kind of start. So currently, We have just been very blessed with people donating to our endowment. We really haven't done a large push with our endowment. We have, again, we target a very older population through our program. So the median age is 84, and most of our individuals live in their own home, which means that given their age group, they are kind of an age where estate planning might be a topic that they are working on. And so we provide information to our recipients and to our volunteers every year about the benefits of giving a lasting legacy. And so that is something that we have kind of passively trying to grow our endowment, and haven't really at this point really done a direct push to grow our endowment.
I can, or if
You
I
go.
can jump. Okay, I can jump in. You know, I'm big on operational costs. You can tell, but my goal is that our goal as an organization, and my goal as executive director, is that we can build our endowment so it covers the majority of our operational expenses as we grow. We are, this is a perfect example of how we're just trying to help people gain awareness of that we have an endowment and that what this process looks like. Because the last 3 years have been a lot of change, having paid staff for the first time for this organization. So while we've been able to lean on our endowment to make sure things are paid for, going forward, we'll need to start expanding our endowment so that we can do more, and so that we can things aren't getting cheaper. So making sure that we can still operate at the level that is what the community deserves, so that we can make an impact. So, going forward, the hope is that we can get our endowment up to a level that it is something where it's like, okay, operational costs are in the bag this year, so that let's concentrate on the really important impact stuff.
Thank you. As mentioned, ours has been more strategic thinking, long-term funding for that. One thing that I would say is our strategy behind it is we're very probably early in the stages of determining this. We're just over that 22 years as an organization. We've built our framework as a Boys and Girls Club. We have a strong donor base, a strong presence in the area. And I think that's when really coordinating and working with some of our donors, that not only us, but everyone is really talking to them about what is the legacy? What do you want to leave on long-term? And many donors, they just want their name to continue being heard in the community. They want that footprint to be here for a long time. And so I think investing in our strategy and thinking about it is, how do we continue having our donors be, recognized throughout past their giving? And so I think that's more of our strategy in figuring out, determining endowments, planned giving is, we're at that probably pivotal time to really start diving down into that, introducing more of that legacy giving right now.
It's so interesting to hear all three of you talk that you all have endowment funds, but you're all functioning differently and using them differently, and how you can modify them to fit perfectly for your organization and what your organizational needs are. And one thing that we've talked about and the foundation talks about with every one of our donors for our organizational endowment funds is how do you make the determination when you're talking to a donor between the giving to the organization, giving to your endowment fund? Because those day-to-day operations are so crucial to what's going on right now. And when you're in those conversations with donors, how you're deciding to send them to the foundation to really enhance their endowment fund.
Well, do you want?
No, go ahead.
Okay, well, I can share a story. This kind of started before I actually came into the organization. But again, we work with an aging population. And so sometimes individuals can't give in the moment, but they want to make us the beneficiary of some of the estate. And so when somebody comes to me and saying they want to give their house, for example, is the example we had, is I was stepped in and was still in the process of having to liquidate assets for an estate, because when you are the beneficiary sometimes of an estate, you literally get the stuff and you don't just get the money. So previously, they had to liquidate a coin collection. They had to liquidate, I have a refrigerator and a vacuum, and sometimes those products are nice to have. You know, like we could use the refrigerator at the time, so that was wonderful. But other times when people say, I want to give you my car, I can't, I can't, nor do I want to be the expert on how to liquidate a car to then turn it into a lasting gift. So, you know, when somebody comes like that for a larger donation, I always kind of think to myself, go to the foundation, because the foundation will help. The foundation is the experts and they will do that work for me, which is lovely. Of course, I always like to have the money for, you know, day-to-day operations and things of that nature. But when somebody comes and wants to talk about like the lasting gift and the lasting impact or a large estate, those are kind of my red flags to be like, let's go to the foundation because they'll help do the work for us.
Thank you, Tasha. As I was mentioning, we are kind of in the early stages of determining with our donors the legacy. And annually we meet with our board of directors, and the last couple we have started, you know, really highlighting our legacy planning, our estate planning. And it's really funny, as I'm having meetings with different board members of different ages and different populations, you quickly get to determine who is looking to start talking about their legacy. Some of our donors and board members, it was kind of very funny when we have this sheet of paper talking about legacy and they're in their mid-40s or mid-50s and we're like, hey, have you thought about this? And it's like, you want to put it in front of them, but you're not wanting to say anything too negative. But it is something where it's really determining and working with your donors, what do they want to do? Really hearing what is their I feel like we're saying legacy so much during this meeting, but really working with them and hearing them, what do they want to do long-term to help fund the organization in their local community. One thing was very beneficial with us going in the community foundation route too, is that as Tasha mentioned, community foundation has just really, you know, they taken over, they help, they know the ins and outs and everything that needs to go into it. And many organizations, when we were in 2012 to where just until about a year ago, we were outsourcing all of our financials. Those weren't done in-house. And so knowing that the community foundation has the expertise and the background knowledge on to better help you and have those constructive conversations on where to go was very beneficial for us in that, where we were as an organization in that. So kind of answered probably a couple different ways in that, Marlee, but I think it's really figuring out each organization is a little bit different on how they want to operate, where they want to operate. But I think investing in your local community foundation just shows how strong your community is also.
Thanks, Danielle. I think, you know, as we've been growing as a historical society over the last few years, really kind of rapidly, you know, the conversations with donors have been more about like, here's what current funding needs and next year's funding needs are, rather than here's what, you know, 20 years from now, or, you know, 10 years from now, or whatever it looks like. Where, you know, I want to get to is not actually having, you know, separate conversations, but having, you know, a portion of every donation being put into the endowment. So that, you know, once we get up to the staffing level that, you know, we think the organization needs, and we're like, this is just what this is now. And kind of going from there, knowing that we, you know, have those endowment funds to fall back on, but are like concurrently fundraising for the endowment as well as our annual budget, so that we're not doing like an endowment campaign. We're always in an endowment campaign. So that's the goal of where we want to get to. There's a historical society in Iowa that I know the executive director, and they, every 10% of every donation goes into their endowment. And I'm like, we're not quite there yet, but you know, we'll get to that point where that, you know, that's a longer term strategy of how we can get our endowment built up so that we can keep doing these cool things.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. And just like Danielle said, every organization is functioning a little bit differently and has different strategy. So my next question, John, you touched on it a little bit, but so I'll let you start if you want to elaborate any more. But when you think about that consistent, every year you're going to get a check from your endowment fund, that knowledge of the consistent gift, what impact does that have on your organization, or as you're leading your organization, kind of having that in your back pocket, that consistent money you're not fundraising for. John talks about operations, so I'll give you the floor first, but just share with us what impact knowing you have an endowment fund means to your.
Yeah, well, and I think that, operations or overhead is, it bothers me when when some people fundraise and they say none of this goes to overhead, and I'm like, great, nobody's doing it. No, because it's really important. It's not just overhead. It's we can't do tours without people. You can't have kids groups come through our sites and learn about our community's past without people, right? And so we are better as an organization then, because of these endowment funds, because it helps fund the people part of our business, right? So that we can keep on evangelizing the history of the area, and making an impact through education. So it's not just like, it's not just John's salary, right? It's like, well, now I can go do this thing, right? And so it gives us the confidence to move forward financially, that we're on stable footing.
You and I went at the same time, Tasha. Sorry. One thing I think when looking at the foundation and figuring out how to best use those resources is, as a nonprofit, you're continually having that annual campaign, those annual grants that you're writing for, those fundraisers that you're consistently doing. And one sigh of relief as a CEO or as any staff at a nonprofit is that sigh of relief, where you know that this is consistent funding that is coming in annually. And you can kind of just take a big breath of fresh air to know that it's in good hands. We're relying on that. We know that we have X amount that'll continue us through this portion of the year. So I think that's more of that sigh of relief as coming in from when that comes in annually, to determine too, strategically as an organization, where to put those, whether it's operation, where is it a newer innovative plan that you're hoping to do, or an innovative program with the kids. But those are all different types of avenues that you can determine to best figure out where is that going to go.
Yeah, and I'll just go along, chime in, the same thing. It's that sigh of relief. Like, it is that part that it's like, okay, that you can count on. You don't have to write a grant for it. You don't have to. It's just the guaranteed. And there have been years where we have been, again, very blessed to have additional community support, where those didn't have to go to operating dollars because we had received additional donations throughout the year. And then those years are the years where you can say, our computers are 10 years old, and to be able to buy that item that was on the wish list that we couldn't financially afford, like that, it's the opportunity to do those upgrades that you don't always have the money in the budget to do as a nonprofit. You got to prioritize being able to do the day-to-day, and sometimes you have to use the old equipment or the borrowed equipment or the hand-me-downs. And so when you get it, it's kind of we can move forward a little bit.
Thanks everyone for sharing. One thing that, as the Community Foundation has conversations with donors, Tasha, you talk about your wish lists in technology. We've had endowment funds for 40 years, and I don't think in the 80s, if you would have told those donors that their gift in the 80s to these endowment funds would be supporting computers, they would say, I don't know what you're talking about, right? So these endowment funds into the organization's long-term success means whatever that looks like in 50 years. There is an element of unknown within giving to endowment funds and what your needs are going to be in 50 years. But this endowment fund will be set up to continue to support you. So I am going to talk a little bit about all the foundation's organizational endowment funds and what we do there. So we have over 35 endowment funds, like I had shared, for organizations in our community. And each one is set up to meet the mission of the organization, and whatever that might mean today and what that might mean in 50 years. When we talk about these legacy conversations with donors, we do have donors who walk in and say, what are you doing here? You know, how can we include our estate plans into the success of the community? And being able to show these organizational endowment funds to those donors for organizations to support into the long term is something that they find extreme value to. So Tasha, John, and Danielle, when you think about one thing that you wish either other organizations knew or donors knew about your endowment fund, what is that one thing, that one piece that you're proud of that other people should know about your endowment fund? We didn't prepare this question, so they're all kind of on the spot here for a second.
I guess I want donors to know how much we value it and how much it really does help the bottom line, like helps with the stress, knowing that we always have those funds available every year, regardless of if grantors come through, if we receive those grant dollars or not, we will always have this. And the fact that it grows, in theory, the way it invests and the way endowments are set up is every year, even without additions, it should grow. Because that's what the investments do. And so every year it should be a little bit more than the year before. And that little bit of growth sometimes means staff raises, sometimes means, again, the computers, or, you know, I'm not buying my own office supplies for work this year. And it means a lot when you're a small nonprofit, or, you know, like all of us are really essentially small nonprofits. It just means a lot to help us keep doing what we're doing.
I think that the big word that comes to mind is growth. In that, you know, like you talked about, like in the 80s, they had no idea what our needs would be 40 years later. And I think that that's a really interesting way to look at things, where, you know, we're going to keep growing as an organization and those dollars are going to keep growing. So there's a relationship that we have with your gift that is more than just a transaction, if that makes sense, of like, you know, you know, giving money to something that will keep on. So, you know, that in itself, I think, is a really powerful message to think about what kind of impact, you know, a donor can have on an organization. This is huge.
I would agree with both Tasha and John in the areas of where the, you know, donors need to invest and why they should be continuing. But I think the one thing it shows when you have an endowment as an organization is just how strong your organization is and how strong your support from the community is. When coming into it and a donor is looking to invest in a nonprofit or any organization, they're going to look to see as what is the legacy, what is their financial health, and showing that you have this already lined up and strategically thinking about where you want to go as an organization in the future to know that those dollars can be coming in annually. I think just shows I want to say character trait, but really just shows that the strength that the organization has.
Absolutely. Thank you all for sharing that. At this point, does anyone have any questions, Kaying? I know you put it in the chat.
Yeah, I haven't seen anybody.
Oh, I muted myself back again. Do you all want to give just an update? John, you talk about operations, so allowing this platform to give us an update from your organization about where you are and where you're going, and looking towards the future, not 50 years, but maybe the next couple of years for your endowment fund.
I can start if everybody's okay with that. Yeah, so we're actually in the middle of strategic planning right now. So, which, you know, is one of the most important things that you can do as an organization, is know where you want to go. And so I think that that's a really apt question for us right now, because I think we're having these big discussions about what do we want this organization to look like. We've had this major transformative experience having paid staff over the last few years. what's the next chapter going to look like? And how does our endowment play into that? It's going to be a big part of that too, because, you know, usually a strategic plan is like 3 to 5 years, but, you know, some of these goals too are 10, 20-year goals, you know, that come out of these things too, that maybe don't make it in this plan, but are kind of in our back pocket. So, you know, the endowment will be really important in that whole process.
Same time every time, Tasha. We're on the same wavelength. Sorry, everyone, you get to hear my snort every so often. We too, it's kind of funny you said that, John, is we're in the middle of a strategic plan as an organization, looking into the 5-year plan, evaluating of what direction we need to go into. I know what I can tell you today is that our needs are ever strong. There is so much need for out of school time programs, a safe place for kids to go when parents are working, whether it's both parents, single parents, foster parents. There is a need for us, and we're at our capacity at many of our sites, and then into this summer, the amount of kids that we're seeing each day. And so I think we're taking that in consideration of where's our capacity, what can we do, and then where does that endowment fit in, is to be determined as we start planning into our next year, our next budget year. A lot of it is kind of probably me as a new CEO coming in and just really taking a pause, evaluating where are our needs, where do we want to go, and thinking as an organization and as in my new role, where do we need to use those funds long term?
So we are not in a strategic planning session right now, so I'm grateful that we are not. But we too are seeing growth. The population is aging, and that is who we work with. So we just keep seeing a continued growth in the people that need our meals. And with that, the expenses, I'm sure you go to the grocery store, the food keeps getting more and more expensive, or at least not reducing in price. What we have been talking about as an organization is doing a better job of communicating with our recipients and our volunteers, who many of them are retired. A better job of estate planning with those individuals. People who are willing to give of their time are often willing to give and with support with finances as well. And so, you know, to be able to be part of their estate plan would be would again have that lasting impact and really benefit us as an organization. And we kind of look at it as like we've got kind of a tiger population between our volunteers and recipients. So really looking at how can we do a better job in the coming years working on those individuals with their estate planning, or providing them more tools for that.
Kying, it looks like you're talking, but you're on mute.
Thank you. All right, we've got a question from Ricky on the chat regarding new organizations. When is the right time to start thinking about creating an endowment?
Yesterday. Like, I think the sooner you can get some, I mean, and Marlee would be able to tell you like what you know the process looks like and the minimum of what you know you have to have going. But like, I think the sooner the better is what my feeling is. Mine's been around for a while, so I wasn't part of the initial discussions on how that started, but
I'm going to jump in here, and probably, Ricky, it's more because I'm coming at it from a parent, a mom aspect. As I was just trying to determine is, when do I open a savings account for my children? When do I start investing in their long-term, in their education? And I would almost compare that to them, is just start it, know that you have it there. And when it comes in handy is when you can start really diving into it. Just because you're starting it doesn't mean you need to do this whole plan giving, endowment and legacy, whole campaign around it. Just start it, and then you'll know in your role when you need to access it.
And I was going to say, to add on to that is, just because you have the endowment doesn't necessarily mean that you have to use the spendable balance every year. You know, you can allow that to roll over And in our organization's time, there have been years where that is what the board decided to do, is that the funds were, we didn't have, our wish list was fulfilled, and we didn't need the operating funds, so we allowed the money to just roll over to grow the endowment more in that year. So.
Ricky, that's a great question. And I can fill in a few of the gaps. So any organization can open an endowment fund for just for their organization with even no balance in it. But to be able to have that conversation with your donors and to also equip the community foundation to have that conversation with our donors. It's kind of twofold there. Until there are specifics, just like John said, but until the fund reaches a certain dollar amount, it doesn't start issuing that annual grant, but that doesn't mean it can't be open. You can't start to have those conversations. There's not like a happy medium time. I think some of you might have heard from Danielle and John, but really the reason that they opened was because it was driven by a donor, but the proactive approach of you already opening it would absolutely be something that we would recommend as well.
Can I tag something on there too? It's also, I would think like opening an endowment would be a great conversation to have with a major donor. Like, hey, we're about to do this really big thing. Do you want to be the lead gift to our endowment?
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you all for sharing that. One thing as I look to other organizations as they've come to the Community Foundation and as you in your roles as executive directors, one thing that some organizations out there in our community don't have endowment funds, and you as executive directors being able to come into your organization or already having one, what might you share with a director who's on the line about maybe I want to start one, maybe I don't, within whatever their structure looks like right now?
Do it. It's worth a while investment. You guys are really easy to work with and great to work with from my perspective. I appreciate the fact that you have conversations with donors. Sometimes people want to talk to you and not directly to us. We've had larger donors who have given to multiple endowments, and we were just one of the endowments that they picked. So if you don't have one, they can't do that. So if you're teetering on the fence, I would strongly encourage you to do it.
I think we did a great job here today, team. And I think everybody who doesn't have one is going to be like, boy, I got to have one of these. But I think that I really don't, there's no drawback that I can think of doing this is, and especially like Tasha was saying that there are, not everybody just gives to the Portage County Historical Society. And I think that, having a philanthropic community is what the Community Foundation really is building the best. I think that's what you guys do a great job at. And so, just being able to, bring us donors that we are, as small organizations, we are strapped with time and staffing, and we can only do so much. And so knowing that the Community Foundation is working with us alongside these things, it takes one more thing off of our plate. So I think that's, get one, and the Community Foundation is a great place to talk about those things.
I think Tasha and John said it very well. I don't know if I have much to add. One thing I would always suggest is having a discussion with your board of directors. I mean, the first way to even your board is some of your strongest donors, your strongest supporters. So even getting that support, that buy-in from them, that you're looking to explore this, and maybe this is something that we should start going down that pathway with, and recognizing who you need to go down. I think that could really be an opportunity for a potential donor to come forth and put some resources into there. But I think working with your local community foundation, I mean, you can't go wrong, right? It's keeping the dollars in your community and supporting all local agencies.
Well, Tasha, John, and Danielle, thank you for your time. This was a great conversation. I'm really excited to be able to share more about your endowment funds, but also to give hopefully inspiration to those that are on the call as well, to even just explore the options. So Kaying, I'll turn it over to you to share about our next lunch hour.
All right, thank you so much, Marlee. Let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, great. We've got our upcoming community lunch hour will be focused on the topic of arts and culture impact, led by our Director of Grants, Community Grants, and the Women's Fund. And then we also have some events coming up that the foundation is involved in. November 1st, the community forum for nonprofits. The link is in the chat. Registration is now open. We have several of us on staff are involved in the planning for that, and we've made a very strong effort to keep this very affordable to nonprofits in our community. So I would highly recommend you take a look at that. And then the Women's Trailblazers Conference. Registration will open in late September, but we are also really excited about this event. So fall will be busy, and we're looking forward to seeing you there. And then I would like to again just mention thank you to our sponsors, Century Insurance and Delta Dental. And I believe there's a question from Sam Dinga. Sam, can you go off mute and let us know what you're asking?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I really wanted to thank the panelists and especially Danielle, our new executive director. I'm speaking on my capacity as board member of Boys and Girls Club. I really wanted to check her out on this outing, and Danielle, A+, A+, A+. Really happy for the work you're doing. Also wanted to share that I was also involved in very early ages when we had the endowment fund for the Boys and Girls Club with little or nothing in the account, and it has been very easy to always look at our annual campaigns and other endeavors and say we want to put a certain percentage towards the account. So I really encourage other organizations to start with little or nothing. It's easier once you have it going, and can't say any more about the community foundation as far as the ability to handle and support these organizations. So go, Danielle.
Thank you, Sam. You're the best.
Thank you for those kind words, Sam. In addition to helping serve with the Boys and Girls Club, Sam's also a board member for the Community Foundation. So we really appreciate your voice in all of this.